Nearly 2,000 Florida gas stations say they have already run out of fuel. Hurricane Milton could make things more complicated in the hours and days ahead, and that's putting it mildly. Here to discuss that and other topics related to Milton and energy, U.S. Secretary of Energy Jennifer Granholm. Madam Secretary, great to see you as always. Talk to my audience about the fuel in Florida and what can or will be done to make sure people have it if they need it.
Yeah, the current situation is that there is enough fuel, but it's more sporadic because there has been a run on gas stations, understandably, and people who are trying to top off and get out of town. Now that we're in a situation where you have to shelter in place, access to fuel in the immediate won't be as much of an issue. The governor has been moving fuel, and fuel had been coming in through the ports. The ports now have been closed, but once the storm is passed, obviously the damage has to be assessed at the ports, but that form of entry will continue as well as the trucks, assuming that the lanes remain open. So the fuel situation right now is not as much as urgent as it was, I will say, 12 hours ago when people were all trying to get out. I will say also that there has been an effort to make it easy for people who don't have access to fuel to be able to get to shelters. There's been an effort to use Uber. The state has created free Uber access if people are in their homes and still need to get to a shelter. And the final thing, I just want to underscore one of the things that one of your previous guests just said, which is even though it's too late to evacuate the state, but there is yet just maybe an hour while people can get to close by shelters and people can get into those shelters. And often they're just like 10 miles, 20 miles away, just out of the eye of the storm. So we're still encouraging people who may still be hanging on to get to those shelters if they haven't already. But the fuel issue should be less of an issue.
And Madam Secretary, what can you tell us about power companies, how they're pre-positioned? Yeah. Who's coming to be there, and what will be done after the storm has passed to get the power back on?
Garrett, this is an amazing part of the American story, which is that there is a mutual assistance, a mutual aid compact among utilities across the country. There are, right now, the latest number I have is 40 states have contributed. 40 utilities in 40 states are contributing personnel to go to Florida and pre-position themselves, and Canada as well is sending personnel from the utilities to be able to help restore once the storm is through. They are pre-positioned right now, either in or around Florida, waiting for the worst to go through so that they can get in there and quickly restore. And one other thing that people need to know, I mean, Florida really is very good at this. We expect there'll be millions of people without power, but Florida and Florida utilities have really done an amazing job at trying to harden their grid. So almost half of their distribution lines, for example, their grid lines, are underground right now. And that is a good way to make sure that they're not obviously whipped around in high winds. And that's an aspect of hardening that's very important. So hopefully with all of the prep work that has taken for decades, they've been undergrounding, that it will be less than it otherwise would have been, the impacts. But it will still be, believe me, millions of people will be without power. And there are tens of thousands of people who are waiting to help.
Madam Secretary, tell my audience what's happening with power in North Carolina and Georgia, because they are still suffering, still reeling from the effects of Helene. Milton is front and center in Florida, but there are still folks who need power and other assistance in North Carolina and Georgia.
That's correct. Even as we're pre-positioning for Milton, we still have thousands of people who are assisting in the recovery efforts in the Carolinas and in Georgia. About 96-97% of the power from Helene has been restored. That remaining bit is all about the most difficult to restore areas where power was completely wiped out, where there is no foundation to just put up a pole again, where you've really got to go in and rebuild. And so that effort is ongoing and will continue to go on. Note that the president has deployed about 1,500 National Guard troops to the states that are affected to really help move the heavy debris and the, cutting through the trees that have come down, et cetera. They may have to, those states, there may be a necessity to rebuild substations. That takes time to be able to do that. So the hardest and the most remote communities that haven't had an experience with hurricanes before and therefore hadn't had hardened infrastructure, those are the ones that will take some time to rebuild.
Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm. Madam Secretary, thank you very much for your time.
You bet, Garrett. Thanks, Sue.